Rachel Hatfield had great hopes for a happy marriage, but after having 3 children, her marriage was falling apart. Rachel fell in love with another man and asked her husband for a divorce. However, her husband didn't take it well, and it all ended tragically. Later, it was revealed that this man's previous wife had died under suspicious circumstances. What exactly happened in the Winkler family? Was the husband a killer who murdered his wives? Rachel Hatfield was born into a regular American family in California in 1975. She was the second of 4 children of Don and Diana. However, when Rachel was 10 years old, her father left the family after her mother had a brief affair with a neighbor. The marriage ended in divorce, and Rachel, along with her siblings and mother, moved to Georgia. Despite this, Rachel was occasionally able to visit her father, but their relationship was cold, as her mother had pitted the children against him. Her father tried to gain custody but lost in court. Rachel struggled with the breakup of her family, and the emotional toll led her to develop anorexia during her adolescence. At one point, her weight dropped to 30 kilograms, and her life was at risk. She was hospitalized in a psychiatric clinic, where she received professional care. Eventually, Rachel recovered, regained her health, and even took up sports. After her recovery, Rachel began to rebuild her relationship with her father. Despite disagreements over her life choices, he accepted her and was proud of her intelligence. She excelled in school, always achieving top grades in all subjects. As an adult, Rachel immersed herself in her work, trying to follow in her father's footsteps as a successful artist. Her father, Don Hatfield, had built a career as an impressionist painter. In high school, Rachel met Tim, who was also an artist. After graduation, they moved in together and faced typical financial difficulties that many young couples experience. With no steady income from art, they worked making frescoes, a more lucrative job that allowed them to rent better housing. But Rachel, despite the success, was not content with this lifestyle. She knew she needed something more stable. Rachel studied business and marketing at Sonoma University and graduated with honors. Her expertise in math was highly praised by her professors, and she was offered a well-paying job. Despite this, she continued to support Tim in his art business. It seemed that the couple's luck was about to change. However, when Rachel was nearing 30, she wanted to start a family, but Tim was hesitant. He insisted they first stabilize their financial situation. This created tension, and their relationship began to falter. In July 2005, while their relationship was on the rocks, Rachel attended a dinner party where she met Todd Winkler. Todd was 8 years older than Rachel and had built a successful career in the U.S. Air Force as a fighter pilot. By the time they met, he had a degree in computer engineering and owned a successful internet business. He was wealthy, with a large house and even an airplane. He was not only successful but also charming, a great conversationalist and easy to talk to. Todd had been married twice before. His first marriage ended when he was young, and his second wife tragically died in a car accident in 1999. By the time he met Rachel, he was looking to start fresh, and he saw something special in her from the moment they met. Rachel was equally drawn to him, and they quickly began a romantic relationship. Within weeks, Todd proposed to Rachel in an extravagant way. He arranged for a plane to fly over, writing, "Will you marry me?" in the sky. Rachel was so taken aback by the grand gesture that she couldn't refuse. This left Tim, her previous boyfriend, with no chance of winning her back, no matter how hard he tried. Rachel quickly told her family and friends that she had found the man of her dreams and was leaving Tim. That summer, Rachel married Todd, and she took his last name, Winkler. Rachel's life quickly transformed. She had the opportunities she had always dreamed of, and together she and Todd worked on building their future. Rachel quickly forgot about the years she spent with Tim, struggling to make ends meet. Tim had been her partner for over a decade, and they had overcome many financial hardships together. But with Todd, she no longer had to worry about money. Within a year of their marriage, Rachel was pregnant, and in April 2007 they welcomed their daughter, Eva. As time went on, things seemed perfect, until 2010, when significant changes occurred. Todd was offered a management position in a prestigious pharmaceutical company, but the job was 2 hours away. Dew began staying longer at his office, and Rachel felt the growing distance between them. The family moved to a wealthy park community where residents lived in luxury homes with private garages and personal jets. Rachel was tired of maternity leave and decided to take a job as an airport manager at a nearby airport. Her husband didn't mind her working. One day in September 2009, when her husband was away at work, Rachel met a former Marine named James White, who was doing repair work at the airport. They began to communicate casually, and their relationship developed into a friendship. During this time, things in the Winkler family began to deteriorate. The once powerful bond between Rachel and Todd seemed to have faded, and they no longer felt the same affection or passion for each other. According to Rachel's loved ones, her eyes had lost their spark, and she no longer radiated the happiness she once had. When Todd found out about her growing connection with James, he was upset. He felt that Rachel was spending more time with James than with him, and he began to suspect that she might be developing romantic feelings for him. Todd turned to his father-in-law Don for advice. Don, a devout man who strongly believed in family values, was outraged by Rachel's behavior. He considered her actions sinful, and like any father, he was concerned for his daughter. Don reflected on his own marriage's failure and the damage it caused to their family, especially to Rachel, who had once suffered from anorexia as a result of the family breakdown. Don had learned from his mistakes and advised Rachel to leave James and focus on her marriage. He believed that reconciliation was possible and that Todd was worth saving. Rachel promised to think about it, but despite her father's advice and the disapproval of others, she continued to communicate with James. She even admitted to her friends that she had fallen in love with him. Todd could sense the growing danger in their marriage. He knew that things were falling apart, and he continued to seek advice from his father-in-law. Eventually, Rachel began to realize that her father's advice had some merit. She understood that raising her children on her own would be difficult, and she decided to stay with her husband. Todd forgave her, and their relationship appeared to return to normal. A few months later, they announced to their family and friends that they were expecting a third child. Todd, eager for a male heir to carry on his business, was hoping for a son, but Rachel agreed to have another daughter. In March 2011, the couple took a trip to Florida to strengthen their relationship, leaving their children with Rachel's father, Don. It seemed that their relationship had improved and they were on the right track. However, there were lingering suspicions that Rachel might have gotten pregnant by James, her lover, instead of Todd. In fact, not everything was as smooth as it seemed. After returning from their vacation, the Winklers had a major argument. Todd left for a work trip to Australia and stayed there for an extended period. While he was away, Rachel began reconnecting with her ex-boyfriend Tim. She told him about her life, including a troubling situation where her husband had issued multiple credit cards in her name, including one for purchasing an airplane. This left Rachel with a $50,000 debt, but Todd quickly paid it off. Tim, still harboring feelings for Rachel, was conflicted as he listened to her complain about her marriage. Despite the emotional distance, he clung to the hope that they might get back together. Meanwhile, Rachel enjoyed the attention and companionship while her husband was absent. When their youngest child grew older, Rachel decided to return to work at the airport, sending the children to daycare. Her father Don was opposed to this because of his religious beliefs, which held that a woman should stay home and care for her children, especially when they were financially secure. However, Rachel refused to give up her career and continued to work, finding fulfillment in her job. James, her former lover, had started his own business nearby. Rachel's father urged her to avoid him, sensing that their connection had turned into something more than just friendship. James, who had also been married twice before, had recently separated from his second wife. He was not looking to destroy another family but couldn't entirely distance himself from Rachel. In early June 2010, Rachel called James to tell him that she was hopelessly in love with him and didn't want to stay with her husband anymore. This revelation took James by surprise, as both he and Rachel were still married to other people. However, he still loved her, and the two of them began meeting secretly, forming a love triangle. Todd, meanwhile, was constantly away for work. With his absence, there were fewer obstacles to Rachel's secret meetings with James. Eventually, James filed for divorce from his wife, citing Rachel as the reason. His wife was furious and told Todd about the affair. Todd, enraged, begged Rachel to end things with James for the sake of their marriage and children. Rachel promised to stop seeing James, but after their conversation, their secret meetings continued. In July 2011, the Winklers had their third child, a boy. Despite the birth of a child that might not have been Todd's, James was still very much in love with Rachel. He dreamed of building a future with her and was even ready to raise her children. However, when he learned that his wife had discovered his ongoing affair with Rachel, he was shocked. Meanwhile, Rachel's father, Don, was staunchly opposed to his daughter's actions and continued to support Todd. Don and Todd frequently spoke on the phone, with Todd seeking advice from his father-in-law. Eventually, Don suggested a meeting between the three men, Todd, Don, and James, to discuss the situation calmly. The meeting took place at James's home. James's daughter, Caitlin, was holding a weapon when the guests arrived, which caused some tension. Despite the tension, there was no violence. James calmly explained that he was still married to Rachel and loved her. He asked Todd to stay away from his wife, but James had no intention of ending his relationship with Rachel. Rachel told James that her husband mistreated her, even calling her pregnancy with their third child rape. Although there was no evidence to support this, James, infuriated by this, became more protective of Rachel, and the situation between the Winklers grew even more tense. In October 2011, Rachel went on a trip to visit her university friends, complaining that Todd had not given her money and that she even had to borrow money for diapers. She claimed their house was in disrepair. Renovations in the house were still unfinished, and her husband was not going to repair them. She complained that he was controlling and manipulating her. She even claimed that she didn't want a third child, but her husband imposed this decision on her, trying to bind her to him with children. She shared these stories with at least 3 of her friends, and it seemed she was in a difficult situation, unsure of how to continue raising her children in the midst of a destructive family environment. One of her university friends was a lawyer, and she advised Rachel about her marriage and potential divorce proceedings. Rachel also sought advice about how to resolve issues with child support, but her husband refused to agree to a divorce. In November 2011, Rachel stopped making mortgage payments for the house. Her husband did not provide her with money and even hid his income from her. She began to fear that he might be planning something against her. On November 11, 2011, she called her lawyer friend and told him that she was ready to start divorce proceedings. She chose this moment while her husband was in Amsterdam for a work trip and was planning to go on vacation afterward. After filling out the necessary documents in February 2012, Rachel was prepared to file for divorce. During this period, she confided in her lover, James, that her husband had discovered electronic records of divorce documents on her laptop, which he deleted. To prevent this from happening again, she began filling out the forms by hand. When her husband learned about the divorce, he tried to avoid it by turning to Rachel's father, Don. He told Don that his daughter was mentally unstable, blaming the divorce on her supposed drinking habits and weight loss. However, Rachel's father did not notice anything unusual during their constant meetings, attributing her weight loss to the stress she was experiencing from the impending divorce. In February 2012, Rachel's husband was in a depressed state, which even his business partner noticed. He suspected his mental state was affected by the divorce. The man considered having her committed to a psychiatric clinic, claiming she was on a drinking binge and that he needed a vacation to cope with the situation. This discussion occurred on February 10th. On February 26, 2012, the divorce proceedings were supposed to begin. Rachel was hoping for a fair amount of alimony based on her husband's high income, and she planned to move with the children to James's house. She was expecting the court to rule in her favor. However, she never showed up at James's house that evening, and her phone went unanswered the following day. The reason for this was that Rachel was no longer alive. On the morning of February 27th, a neighbor saw her husband with their children, who appeared to be doing well. Around 10:30 a.m., he handed his children to the neighbor because something terrible had happened in his house. He was expecting law enforcement and did not want the children to witness what was unfolding. The neighbor noted that the man seemed calm and was not visibly injured, only fussing around. It turned out that he had called 911 and reported that his 37-year-old wife, Rachel, had died during a domestic dispute. Police arrived around 10:40 a.m., and the husband came out of the house with his hands up, bandaged. He told them that his wife was dead inside the house, and she was found lying on the floor nearby. The husband was arrested and taken to the police station. He agreed to talk with investigators without a lawyer. Despite his calm demeanor during the interrogation, his story was full of inconsistencies. He admitted that his wife had a long-term affair and had filed for divorce, seeking full custody of their children. He explained that the conflict between them escalated, and in a fit of anger, he attacked her. However, he claimed that when he heard their child crying, he took the children to another room. Afterward, the argument continued, and he attacked her again, this time hitting her in the face. She responded with a blow, and he began to apologize, realizing that he had done something foolish. But when his wife approached him with large scissors, she struck him several times on his hands. They struggled for the scissors, but according to him, Rachel was in excellent physical shape, and it was difficult for him to overpower her. He eventually poked her in the eye with his thumb, disarming her. The man ran out of the room to get the children to a safer place. He claimed that he was afraid for the children's safety, as his wife seemed to be drunk and a potential threat. When he returned, he found Rachel sitting on the floor in the bedroom. He said she kicked him in the face in a fit of rage, and in the ensuing struggle he strangled her with his hands. He also claimed that Rachel grabbed the scissors again, but he immediately took them away and delivered several strong blows to her face and neck in self-defense. According to him, his wife begged him not to kill her, promising to save their marriage, but he couldn't control his anger. He stuck the scissors into her neck with all his might, resulting in her death. After realizing what he had done, he attempted to resuscitate her, but she was already dead. In shock, he tried to clean up the crime scene, washing away the blood, but soon realized that it was futile and called 911. However, detectives did not believe his account. There were many inconsistencies in his testimony, and it was illogical that he had taken the children to the neighbor before the murder. Furthermore, Rachel had not attempted to flee or take advantage of the situation. Investigators also found it implausible that he, a man much larger than his wife, could have struggled with her for so long without overpowering her. The medical examiner concluded that Rachel had died 6 hours before the 911 call, which contradicted his entire story. An autopsy revealed multiple injuries on Rachel's body: broken ribs, abrasions, cuts, and puncture wounds, particularly on her face and neck. A fatal wound severed her jugular vein, leading to death after several minutes of bleeding. Protective cuts on her arms suggested she had fought back during the attack. The medical examiner also determined that she was not drunk, as her blood alcohol level was only slightly above the legal limit for driving. The brutality of the attack made it clear that this was not a case of self-defense. Further investigation revealed that Rachel's husband had been involved in the suspicious death of his previous wife, Katherine. Katherine's death in 1999 had been ruled an accident, but new suspicions arose. Katherine had died in a car accident, allegedly caused by her losing control of the vehicle while rushing her husband to the hospital after an allergic reaction. However, there were several inconsistencies in his version of events, such as how he was able to climb the mountain to seek help without equipment, and the strange fact that he was not injured despite the severity of the crash. After Katherine's death, Todd Winkler received a life insurance payout of over $1 million, severed ties with her family, and began a new life with Rachel. Katherine's family had suspected foul play, believing that Todd had staged the accident to kill his wife for money. Their suspicions only grew stronger after Rachel's death. The case against Todd Winkler was now being closely scrutinized. Investigators began to believe that he had planned Rachel's murder long before the event. It was believed that he killed her not because of the affair or the divorce, but because she knew too many of his secrets and had threatened to expose him. To silence her, he killed her. At trial, it was established that Todd Winkler had mental health issues, including dissociative and conversion disorders. While psychiatrists considered him sane, the defense argued that the murder was committed in self-defense, claiming that Rachel had attacked him first. The prosecution, however, argued that Todd had staged the murder, taking 6 hours to clean up the crime scene, tend to the children, and prepare breakfast for them before calling 911. They concluded that he had planned the murder in advance, and the jury convicted him of first-degree murder. On December 2014, Todd Winkler, 47, was sentenced to 26 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in June 2031, when he will be 64 years old. Despite multiple appeals, his conviction stood. Todd Winkler, once a wealthy businessman, now lives in San Quentin State Prison, where he has managed to achieve high standards of detention for himself. However, serving his sentence in a state prison is still a discomfort for him. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments and don't forget to like this video. Thanks for watching.